The James Show Podcast.
We've been tracking some strange occurrences from Wylie ISD, Wylie East High School. A couple weeks ago, had a table set up by a group called Why Islam, and they go around proselytizing, trying to convert people, handing out Qurans, handing out pamphlets, handing out hijabs to the girls if you want to have a little female oppression fantasy camp. Hey, see what it's like to be oppressed based on your gender. This is great. So they have that going on. On top of that, there's been reports that there is halal options now in the school menu. And the Christian taxpayers in North Texas are saying, what the hell's going on? What happened? First off, what happened to all that separation of church and state garbage? That's why we can't have the Bible mentioned in any curriculum. That's why we can't pray in schools anymore. That's why we can't have the 10 Commandments and a poster on the wall. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state. Hell, Tallarico just said it 2 days ago on Colbert. Where they at on this one? And this should be really disturbing and eye-opening for a lot of people, because that means they're not really against church and state being intermixed. They're just against Christianity being promoted in public schools. Why? Because we don't vote Democrat. I think it really is that easy. Now, they had a meeting about it yesterday at Wylie ISD, and my next guest was there. Kaylee Campbell, a local independent journalist, has been doing great work uncovering some of this and H-1B abuse. But today, let's talk about that meeting last night. What'd you see? Was it packed?
Yeah, it was pretty packed. There was about 30 to 40, just normal Wylie citizens there. And then there was only about maybe 10 Muslims, I'd say.
Okay. Where was it, like standing room only?
Well, the seats were all filled up, so people started lining the back of the room as well. So it was pretty packed, and there were a lot of speakers.
So what happened at this meeting?
So at the beginning, a bunch of regular citizens went first. They said their piece. They brought up, the tables, the school safety, which is a very large issue that kind of contributes to all of this as well. And in the middle of the meeting, once kind of the Muslims started going, there was one lady who everybody had 2 minutes to speak, except for this lady, apparently. She was given more than 2 minutes to speak because the board did not stop her from talking, which upset a lot of the people in the audience. And it did get pretty heated, I'd say.
So explain how it got heated. Were people throwing rotten tomatoes or booing and hissing or chunking chairs? What do you mean by that?
I would say more the booing and hissing. People were definitely upset that lady got over 2 minutes, but a lot of what the Muslims were saying was what they always do. They have their whole spiel about how it's hate and hate has no place here, and they're just here because, it's America. And they never have any substance to back up, any of their arguments. But a lot of the other people, a lot of the parents from Wylie ISD were extremely upset and voicing legitimate concerns, whether it was their children being indoctrinated in schools, or how did these people get into the school to begin with? What if somebody had came in with a box that wasn't filled with Qurans? What if it had a gun in it? Things like that. And the school board was not having really any of it.
Well, even worse, as far as the security concerns go, what if those boxes had the Bible in it? Oh, my God, Kaylee.
Oh, my God.
The chaos that would have happened, I know.
They wouldn't have even let him in to begin with, to be honest.
All right, let's talk more about the meeting. How long did it last?
It went about an hour and a half, 2 hours. People kind of left after the first segment was over. Nobody really cared. They did a police backpack thing and stuff like that. But pretty much the first segment was about an hour.
Do you think any of it resonated with the school board or the administration?
No, I was sitting there watching Bill Howard, the president, roll his eyes and shake his head in disagreement. He wasn't having any of it.
Tell me about this principal that seems to get a lot of focus on social media. She loves posing in hijabs. Have you seen any pictures of her with a cross or a Bible?
No, I have not. Apparently she was there last night, but she wouldn't talk to anybody.
You saw her there, or it was reported that she was there?
One of the speakers, she was out in the hallway at the beginning in the middle half, and one of the speakers tried to go up and speak to her, and she just refused to talk to anybody. So she was there. I didn't get to personally speak to her.
Okay. Did they announce that they're going to change any policies or react in any way to the controversy? No changes. Do we know who got suspended?
We don't. They never said anything about that. ever,
Because
other than in their statement.
yeah, after the Why Islam table was set up, they told us that someone in the administration made a mistake and they've been suspended. They didn't say how long. They didn't say who it was. They didn't say if it was with or without pay. So I don't know if someone's still suspended, if they were suspended for 6 minutes, or if they lost their job. The lack of transparency makes me think that the answers are something they're intentionally hiding from us.
Yeah, 100%. Especially because we know that the principal was involved in it last year and involved in it this year, and they want to play the card that says that they had no knowledge of it, but that's not the case, because when Christian organizations, or any other organization for that fact, has to have somebody come onto the campus, they have to go through 15 different procedures just to get it approved. And so there's no way. They're hiding stuff, and they are just trying to cover their butts because they got caught.
Yeah. And look, you're a parent. I'm a parent, and I've had calls of people who, like when my daughter forgot her trumpet one day, I have to go through like 2 doors and talk to someone through a camera speaker. And then I have to sign in on some tablet, on an electronic iPad looking thing, all to what? Hand my daughter a trumpet? Like, what do you think this is? A trumpet shaped bomb? You know me. My sister works here. It's so ridiculous. But yeah, I'm supposed to believe that, oh, jeepers, I don't know how these guys got in here. We're going to have to do something about that. They knew about it, Kaylee.
Yeah, oh yeah, they did. School security is not a new thing. Back when I was in high school, we still had metal doors, and to be buzzed in, you had to go through 15 different doors just to get inside. You'd have IDs to get into the school. So none of this is new, and it's absolutely ridiculous.
All right, Kaylee Campbell, what are you working on next?
Right now, I'm kind of calling out Waxahachie ISD for a 4th grade student being abused in a special education classroom, and I'm interested to see what that school board meeting is going to be like. So that, and just more H-1B visa stuff, seeing what other new Muslim projects are going to pop up in the North Texas area.
Okay, well, thank you so much for going to that meeting last night, and because most of us don't get to go and sharing with us what's happening. I appreciate the work.
Thank you.
All right, this is the great Kaylee Campbell, spelled with a K. Last name's totally normal. Find her online. She's got a lot of great work, especially on the H-1B visa stuff. We are not done with that story either. This is Dan and Wylie. Oh, you're in Wylie. You must have some strong opinions on this. You're on WBAP. Go, Dan.
Hello, good afternoon. I've only got a minute. I'm with my kids.
Okay.
But yeah, first time listener and caller. I was at the meeting last night, and I went strictly as a parent of 3 small kids that'll be in Wylie schools. And I'm pretty down the middle, I guess, these days, politically speaking. And I went on the basis of asking my school board leadership for some accountability on what went wrong. My focus on this is on the systems that failed. Who was letting whoever into the school is really what I'm worried about. And everything that's happening, I think, right now in the country speaks to what was happening at a school board meeting last night. There were people that came in from neighboring towns, certainly allowed to speak their opinions, but the room was taken over by this view, this strong-held view against my neighbors, who I want my children to go to school and learn from. I want them to learn from teachers. I want them to learn the basics of education in the schools that I'm sending them to, but I also want to learn from people that they, will be going to class with. So for me, the issue in Wylie is best held by people that live here. And I am one of the people that do. I appreciate that people came in from as far away as Dallas to speak at the meeting, but like I said, second to the matter of what groups are there is school safety for me.
Are you new to the area?
I was born and raised in North Texas and live in Wylie now for 3 years.
All right, so what did you think of the meeting overall?
I was a bit disappointed, quite frankly, in people and the behavior of people. And I think it's very indicative of what's broken down in our country right now. We can't just let others speak who might be wearing things differently than what we're wearing, or dressed differently, or speaking differently, or having different views. It was the wrong forum. So I wasn't really impressed with the behavior of some people there. I also really appreciated the viewpoint of the student who made the video to begin with.
Marco?
I was impressed. Sure, I was impressed with the point of him pointing out this issue of systems there at the school. And if Christians can be allowed to set up a table, Muslims should be allowed to too. It's this like all or nothing attitude that I would appreciate, this equality approach that I would appreciate if that's the direction we want to go. So long as the systems are in place to vet visitors, and that student groups aren't just, running amok. I think this is how we get back to a culture in this country of being able to sit across from each other, talk about things, be respectful, because that's what I miss. Like, I miss this from 20, 25, 30 years ago.
Dan, what if Nazis wanted to set up a table?
I mean, I think I appreciate the question, but I think we would all agree that's not acceptable. What I'm getting at is groups that come into this school.
So you're not really open to all groups. You just think it's acceptable, the ones that you think are acceptable. And you just have a wider identification of what is acceptable than the people who were hollering against it last night.
I appreciate the question, and let me try to take a minute to answer it, and we'll see if the answer is satisfactory. If we can determine, if a person can sit down and get educated on the radicalism of any take, any party, any group, any whatever, and if we find that group is preaching the most radical of whatever it is their book, their belief is, then no, they should not be allowed into our schools. Not at all. And I think I appreciate you taking the extreme of the Nazi party an example. But I think by a reasonable person's standard, no, we would not allow the Nazi party.
But then the reason I did that, and I'm not here to beat you up, is because you just said, well, I'm just open-minded that anyone can. No, you're not. You don't want Nazis to do it. So while some people, I think all of us agree that Nazism is an ideology that's so abhorrent and so antithetical to our values in Western civilization and, the American Judeo-Christian jurisprudence. It's so unacceptable that it shouldn't be allowed in our public schools. Now, there's a lot of other people who think Islam, especially the theocratic version of it that's handing out Qurans and headscarves to little girls, that is unacceptable to be taught. That they think that is too limiting and has a bad history of not really accepting everyone's full complement of human rights. Because, everywhere where Muslims are a majority of the population, they don't have the same rights that we have here. And so I think people are just as concerned, and this isn't born out of religious bigotry as much as it is born out of wanting to protect our natural rights as outlined in the Constitution. And everywhere they become a majority, that doesn't happen.
Sure. Okay. We're talking then on a gradient of what parts of a religion are going to believe. You and I have friends, most likely. I know I have friends that are Christians, God-fearing, go to church, and they use contraception, or doing something that in the literal and defined definition of the Bible that it says, that the good book says not to do. This is, I think this is equal to the discussion on Islam, and I think if a group, certainly the edge and the extremes of any religion, whether it's Islam, Christianity, and
it's not the extremes on Islam. Name the Islamic country where women have their full complement of human rights. It's the mainstream of their religion. Everywhere it goes where they take over, rights are diminished, especially for women. That's all. And it's not born out of a place of hate as much as it's born out of people who want to preserve the country with the mores and the values, the liberties and the rights that our forefathers passed along to us. It's not born out of hatred. It's not born out of bigotry or religious hatred or animosity. It's just we want to protect our rights. We see how this works everywhere else it's tried, and we don't want it here. But separation of church and state, all these people just disappear. When Wylie High School has their National Hijab Day table, when they're handing out Qurans, when they're showing your daughters how to put on a headscarf. Isn't this great? He. Now they're offering halal food in the school cafeteria. And I'm just wondering, where's all you church and state people at? Because if you're silent on this one, then you're not really for separation of church and state. You're just anti-Christian bigots, and you're busted, aren't you? So there was a big meeting in Wylie last night to address it. The reports aren't looking too optimistic. So here we are. Jay Palo Pinto, you're on WBAP. Hey, Jay.
Hey. My biggest complaint, if it's a complaint, is the abuse of the phrase separation of church and state. The Constitution doesn't call for a separation of church and state. The Constitution calls for this government not to dictate a religion, any single religion, not to favor any single religion.
Right, no establishment of religion, right.
Right. It's a misnomer to say that there's an actual or should be an actual separation of church and state, because that doesn't work.
Well, and it's also, people forget the context that this was written at a time when there wasn't other republics. Every place else on earth was a kingdom, and they all had their state religions. For a lot of them, that was the Roman Catholic faith. But for like England, they had the state church. The Anglican church was their state church. For the Irish, it was Catholics. For the Scottish, for some reason, they jumped on Presbyterian. The Germans were turning into a Lutheran state. Actually, it wasn't really Germany back then. It was a separation of like Prussia and Bavaria and Saxony and a little bit of Holy Roman Empire left over. But they all had their designated established church preference. If you went over to Greek, they had their Orthodox. Russian has Russian Orthodox. The Byzantine Empire, which had just fallen a couple of years before that, they had their own Orthodox. So this is what they were addressing, not the fact that we're supposed to eliminate all expression of religion from the public sphere. That is a ideology called state atheism, and it's actually a part of Marxism/socialism. It's what's practiced in Cuba to this day. It's what was practiced in the Soviet Union for 70 years before it collapsed. And people mix the two. We have a secular republic, not state atheism. And that's a point that we should probably bring up every time this happens, Jay.
Exactly, and that's my point. I don't mind that somebody comes in and expresses their religious view. That doesn't mean that they get to dictate what everyone else gets to say or not get to say. My biggest problem is the education system. We lack any religious education, that none of these things are. Most of the kids don't have a real religious education background in order to discern what the pluses and minuses in many of them are.
Well, yeah,
and it's maybe too big a discussion to have in most of the schools. So, if you're going to talk about one, you got to talk about them all.
And that's what a lot of people are asking for. Hey, if my religion's not allowed in school, why is this religion allowed in school? If the religion that shares the foundational beliefs of Western civilization, our founding fathers, the Constitution, and all of our mores, traditions, and history, if that one's not allowed in, then why is this one allowed in? The one that doesn't like bikinis, the one that doesn't like bacon, the one that doesn't like dogs, the one that makes women wear headscarves and you can beat them and their testimony doesn't count the same as a man in court, and all kinds of other obviously discriminatory, not good for individual rights beliefs. I mean, where are we throwing gays off of buildings on planet Earth? Is it in Christian nations or is it in Muslim nations? And so it just blows our mind. Can we at least get equal treatment to the actual oppressive religion? Because we're being treated like what? Christo-fascist. Craig and Saxby, you're on WBAP. Hey, Craig.
Hey, I think you're right. And the big problem with these previous callers is they're missing the big picture. The first response from Wylie was, hey, they didn't follow the proper paperwork. That's why we're upset. It's similar to the same response we got from Greg Abbott, which is, hey, this new enclave they're building, they didn't follow the proper housing procedures. They're missing the forest for the trees. Islam is jihad dressed up in a costume of religion. Islam is, and that's how we need to treat it, and that's how we need to respond to it. There's no separation of state and jihad, right? We need to fight jihad, and that's what this is. In Saxe, right down the road from me, the biggest church in Saxe shrunk, and they decided to sell their building, First Baptist Saxe. And they said, we will not sell to Islam, because the Islamists had bought right next door to them like 10 acres for the Islamic Center of Saxe. It's a core piece of this epic center in Plano. And they proxied it through a bunch of companies to trick them into selling it. They sold it to a company, which then sold it immediately to another company, and now the Muslims have it. right? And that's what they do. They lie, cheat, they do anything they can to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. And this isn't a simple paperwork problem at Wylie. They should say, there's no way ever Islam's coming into our school. We have a separation of our school and jihad. We have a separation of state and jihad.
Not anymore.
Islam is jihad.
Not anymore. Y'all had a meeting about it. You were largely blown off. Nothing is going to change. So I don't know what y'all do next, but whatever you just did, I don't think it's going to work. And I'm not saying you're wrong, Craig. You're absolutely right. Thank you very much for calling in. Well, I got some more good callers on the separation of church and state argument, because it's exactly the opposite between what James Tellerico just told Stephen Colbert 2 nights ago on the Late Show versus what was told to you and other parents at Wylie ISD last night.
The James Show Podcast.